welcome to another session of Black Beyond Borders. So, this is a podcast which I interview Black people from all over the world to talk about their experience living in different countries, working, and what does it mean to be Black where they are. Today, we have Chef Laurence Gomez on, who is from the UK, but is fresh off of spending almost a month in the US for the first time and experiencing full throttle Black America. So, why don't you just introduce yourself, Lawrence? Where are you from? And how is it that you got into cooking?
My name is Laurence Gomez. I was born in Gambia. I moved to the UK when I was 4 years old. I've been a chef just over 20 years now. I got into cooking through my mum and my aunties, seeing them cook at home always fascinated me in terms of what they were making the night before and what they produced on the day of any function that we had in our household. So it was the whole social experience that made me get into cooking.
So, like, give me a taste of Gambia. What were some of the things they're cooking for those who don't know what like Gambian cooking staples are?
So Gambian cooking is more about like our sauces and marinades,
Okay.
which I've created myself. And we have dishes. Our national dish is called the Benichin. Benichin means one pot.
Okay.
So it's what other countries, replicate in terms of Senegal. They have Chebujen, and then the Nigerians, the Ghanaians, and other West African countries, they have their jollof. So it originates from Gambia from a dish called Benichin, which means one pot. We have dishes, super kanja. Kanja in Wolof is okra, and that's like a stew, kanja stew. Then we have like a peanut butter space stew
Mm,
called domada, which you serve with either meat or fish, but predominantly beef or lamb. So
mm.
those are our like three top um, dishes from what I grew up with in my household, and everything's complemented with rice.
Okay, there's always rice.
There's always rice.
Every West African or really African plate I've had, there's always rice. So how do you get from there to your own restaurant? So you grew up in Gambia. Tell us about how you got to the UK and then how you're inspired by the women in your family, what they're cooking at home cooks, but then you end up becoming a chef.
So the journey was always stop start. It's only when I got the opportunity to work at a restaurant, a famous iconic restaurant in London called the Ivy. I had the opportunity to work there as a staff food chef because I've always wanted to do work in the kitchen, but I never knew the route to go down there. But taking it back, when I was at school, I went to a mixed school, and basically in my food technology class, um, I was the only boy in the class.
Hmm.
So I tried to do it as an
Oh, it's
exam at
probably like
school.
our equivalent of like home economics or something. We have something
Yeah,
we used to call home economics where you learn how to cook.
yeah. So we learned how to cook there. So unfortunately, I didn't actually sit my exams in food tech because I was extremely distracted.
That's funny. That's ironic.
Yeah, being the only guy. So further down the line, I've always wanted to do it in terms of when the opportunity came to work at this restaurant, the Ivy. I started as a staff food chef. So right from the bottom, and then I always had the mentality that this is what I wanted to do as a career. And I actually love what I do because, as I said, mentioned growing up, I was very passionate about food.
Okay, so you moved from the Gambia when you were 5?
4 years old.
4 years
Four
old, right?
years old.
So you primarily grew up in the UK. So tell me about that. Because this podcast really is exploring Blackness across the world. So what does it mean to be an African-born male who moves to the UK at 4? Like, what was your experience like?
It was tough. We grew up in a council estate. So you Americans call the project, we call it the council estate in Britain. But, in the 90s, being African wasn't seen as cool.
Mm,
So, we had our hardships because, we were like the next generation of Black people moving into the country after
mm,
the Caribbeans who already pretty much settled, a few years before us. So if you were African, you were seen upon as, something negative,
mm,
and, you weren't treated well. Most Caribbean friends that I have now, we laugh and joke how Africans used to be treated,
yeah.
and there was a lot of like I don't know if I can call it racism or something like that, but there was a lot of things between the two cultures of Africans and Caribbean. But
Mm,
like with my family, because my surname is Gomez, so if you had a really strong African surname, you were laughed upon, and your
mm,
complexion of your skin, because most Africans were darker than Caribbeans. So it was difficult because we didn't have it easy from both sides then. I used to have a lot of Caribbean friends used to say to me, their parents or their grandparents will say, never eat at African house, don't do
mm.
this, don't do that, because my house was so open, we used to host a lot of Caribbean. So it was tough. I wouldn't say for me personally, because I kind of got along with everyone, but I can see so many people had
The
it like
patterns.
very, very difficult. Like even when I was at school, there was you know, where was she from? I think she was Nigerian and she had her hair out, natural hair out,
Mm.
so
Yeah,
it
that
looked back
wasn't
in
a
the
thing in the
90s.
90s at all.
It wasn't a thing, and she used to get it from all, side of the fence. From the other culture, like, you kind of expect it, but from your own, it was different. So there was a bit of controversy between Africans and, Caribbeans. And I'm not saying that the Caribbeans did it all, because the Africans did the
It
same
went
thing,
both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that mirrors there's this kind of, like, anti-Black, anti-African racism and colorism that happens in the
Yeah.
US. You
Yeah.
were an African who, immigrated to the US in the '90s or the '80s, you would probably be getting the same type of treatment from Black people. So I can
Yeah.
remember I mean, from Black Americans, and I can remember Black Americans calling Africans African booty scratchers. Now, where do kids make up this foolishness? That doesn't make sense.
I know. I know.
You're just like, "Who
Kids
made that up?"
say the meanest things.
Yeah, so you were like if you were African or you had natural hair, same thing, you were like an African booty scratcher or you were exoticized or an anomaly, and whether you were Black or African, the darker you were, the more you probably got teased, the more you were criticized, right? Because I think that, unfortunately, uh, white supremacy and colonialism makes us want to be the furthest thing from like the original Black people, right? Which is, African people. And we see that. So it's really interesting that you had a very similar experience
Yeah.
with Caribbean people, right? And so they're the
Yeah.
Black people that got there before this African people would have migrated there. So very interesting. Okay. So how did that shape your conception of who you were and your identity, or did you feel like you kind of moved through it more seamlessly?
I think I kind of moved through it because, like, coming as an immigrant, you have a different type of mentality. Like, you're on, this is not my house. I've got respect and play by the rules. So
Hmm.
we were always brought up to have that type of attitude. So it was a thing where it didn't concern me as much in who I wanted to be. All I had
Mm.
to do was just respect you. If that's the way you want it, I respect your household. And then if I don't want to come back there, I won't come back there. But while I'm here, I'll respect you and your household. So it just made me just see things from the side of humanity more than anything else. And then, basically, I didn't
Mm.
want to be like them in terms of judging people based on all these, wild thoughts that I was thinking. So, in a way, it benefited me in terms of my relationship with other types of cultures and everything else because I wouldn't want to treat anyone else in that way.
Right. So your response was like, people can suck sometimes. It probably has less to do with where they're from or their color. They can even be
Yeah,
good people
yeah.
or not good people, right? And not
They're not.
putting that on a whole people in a whole culture. But I'm interested in like what is and I think that y'all have different conceptions of Blackness. What is it like for a Black person moving in a white world in the UK?
I think it's obviously like in terms of like opportunities, you don't get the same opportunities. So I think that's one of the biggest things. And because I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood, it's only when I went to high school, that's when I saw white people. And then when you're in the UK, like my school, I went to a Catholic school. It was like majority Black and Irish. The
Mm.
English were the minority. You know,
Oh,
And in England, it's different because I've had a few conversations with Americans here where you guys might see white people as white, but like we see them as Irish, we see them
right.
as English. So the Irish and the English, they've already had their own personal, grievances and past beefs and stuff like that. So,
Mm,
blacks and Irish got treated pretty much the
this
same
yeah,
in
yeah.
England. So they kind of lean towards one another, especially in that time, in the 80s and the 90s. So they kind of got it, who they were. So in a sense where, yeah, it was just, it was interesting in that sense.
Mm.
Very interesting.
Well, I mean, that makes sense because when the Irish came to the US, they were kind of the black people of
Okay.
white people, right? So they were treated Irish people, and Jewish people, and in some instances, Italian people. When they first came to the US, they were treated like, yeah, y'all are the bottom of the barrel. And some of the
Yeah.
not as drastic, but some of the same points of discrimination, of exclusion, and then I think that's why we have this conception of whiteness here. They were like, we just wanna be white, so we're gonna pass into whiteness, and we're gonna leach
Hmm.
some of our ethnic, cultural distinctiveness, and so that we can
Yeah.
be white and just be a part of white America, because that's we wanna get those particular privileges. So very, very interesting. So I'm interested in how your heritage from the Gambia shows up in your current food. So you would describe your food as African fusion, I think. And so
Yes.
how do the things that you learned in Gambia show up in your food, in your recipes?
It shows up because in terms of the first thing is my sauces and marinades
Okay.
that I make. So in terms of the ingredients that I use, they're heavily sourced from back home. So just creating, what I grew up with in terms of seeing the process of everything getting marinated the night before, making my own fresh sauces and marinade, which is a big secret. So that's the first thing, using the sauces and marinades as a base for meats, fish, and vegetables. So
Uh,
yeah.
I,
So that's where
no, go finish.
no, I was just saying that's where I started the journey about the African fusion cuisine and using, my culture in terms of Gambia for the food that I do now.
So I know you're not gonna give up your recipes, but give us an idea because our viewers and listeners probably have never tasted Gambian food. Give us an idea
Yeah.
of the flavor profile or the kind of spices that you are marinating your meat, your fish in.
Yeah. So like for example, we call chili carne.
Okay.
So when we say carne, it has to be spicy.
Okay.
Yeah. But with the carne it has to come flavor. So
Okay.
this is all Wolof, by the way. Sorry. It has to be flavor. So the profile that I'm looking for, you know, the food might be hot, but first thing that you're thinking about is the flavor. And then afterwards it's the heat, the carne, rather than it's just the carne, hot, 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 hot. So every time when I started making my marinades, I was always looking for the flavor profile, and then the heat will come afterwards. Whereas you find most um, dishes that are spicy, it's just hot, 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 hot.
Mm.
In terms of the spice levels.
Okay. So what kind of spices do y'all use in Gambia?
Okay, I gave you so the main, like for example, you're familiar with. It was very hard to get here, by the way. So the red Scotch bonnet peppers.
Yes, I'm aware. They do not.
Yeah, so
They,
you're aware
y'all,
because you
did you get them
traveled.
here for the dinner? Did you get them here for the dinner, or you couldn't find them?
I ended up getting them here.
Okay.
I ended up getting them here. But
Okay.
that's one of the main ingredients of red Scotch bonnet peppers because red Scotch bonnet peppers, which is all over the Africa and then all over the Caribbean, it's a special type of pepper because it has some sort of sweetness and fruitness to it, as well as being spicy. So this is why I prefer this pepper, and it also comes from home than other peppers because other peppers they don't have the same taste
Mm.
profile. So if you are brave enough to bite into two different types of peppers, you'll taste the difference in terms of how it is. So that's one of the main ingredients, for
Was
example.
that was that why so context for viewers, Lawrence has been in Richmond probably for about 3 weeks, almost a month now, and he had a dinner that he hosted called A Love Letter to Africa. And so we had a 5-course meal. So what was on the menu? We had okra tempura, we had
Yeah,
the prawns, and was the scotch bonnet,
prawns.
was that the heat on the prawns?
The marinade on the prawns.
Yeah, okay, because I was like, "There's some heat on that." Okay, that makes, and then we had salmon, and we had some steak, and then we had what y'all would
Cassava
call,
fries,
because those were like my favorite, low key. And then we had the banana cake.
banana cake.
Yeah, yeah, which is kinda like our banana bread, right? So you would have used the scotch bonnet on the prawns. Is that what gave it to the heat?
So yeah, the marinade on the prawns, and then for the compound butter that I made for the steak. Yeah, so that was the compound butter is used with my marinade for the steak.
Okay, okay, okay. So you are hoping to potentially open up a restaurant in the US. So, I want to talk about that in a bit, but I would love to get with, this is just funny and purely for laughs. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
your fir- this is your first time in the US. You're primarily interacting with Black Americans. What has that experience been like for you? What have been some highlights or some challenges? Yeah, so just kind of talk about that.
Okay, I'll start with the challenges.
Okay.
The
Okay.
challenges has been your metric systems.
Yes, 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 yes.
Weight, height, measurements on my days. As a chef, it's been a
Mhm.
nightmare to source ingredients. So that's been like for this dinner, looking around and trying to find black sesame seeds.
Mm,
Like went to at least 5 different stores, drove around town, and it ended up being in Whole Foods, but then we went to another shop where they had it also. So yeah, so that's been the challenges. Anyway, moving on to the
so
positives.
food that you usually cook with that you might not get here, and then, of course, we have different weigh systems, so you have to
Yeah, so
weigh
food here, and then
everything in your
like
head.
the prices, so the price of food, like for example, the steak, the salmon, were really expensive. So the
Mm,
dinner was expensive. Coming from a background where I have my own suppliers back home in London,
yeah.
I'm privileged because I can just call up and say I want 10 steaks or 10 portions of salmon, and I will get it in the way that I want. So there was a sense of privilege just from my end. So just getting familiar with the weights and the metric system, moving forward, that's
Yeah,
going to be something.
those are some big steaks. I took some home, and that had a whole meal, maybe some steak and egg.
Breakfast. Yeah, you said. Yeah. That's what you like. So no, I totally understand that though. So yeah, but onto the other side, the positive side, it's just the people, the stories, just the history. The tour that you took me down for the Black Mural tour was special. The amount of history the city has, but it's the people. Like
Mhm.
having conversation with yourself, your journey, your experience on life. It's just next levels, and it's not something that I get. And when I said to you the other day, like Black American women are my favorite people because you lot are just, you got charisma, you're like super confident, and then I just love your energy, and then you guys just keep it real. So all the women that I've met here, they've just been extremely special, and I just love you guys.
You can't You can't bring, well, I think that is has been one of my experiences internationally, so I travel internationally, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Let me go find." I'm always wanna be immersed in culture, but I was like, I'm always finding Black American women to engage with because they're like, "Okay, sis, let me give you the lowdown. Let me tell you what's what. Imma get a good laugh,
Yeah.
get some resources, some recommendations." So I totally feel you on that kinda, like, communal aspect. I think that a lot of Black American women have cultivated in making sure people we interact with have a good experience, and we are part of creating that good experience, or at least pointing them in the right direction. Are there 1 or 2 experiences, conversations, meals, drinks? We did a lot, so for the viewers, I took Laurence on a Black Mural tour, so In Richmond, we have something called the Mending Walls Project, which is put up tens of Black murals in Richmond,
Mhm.
but there were also murals before that. So we went on that, and then we've been kinda going on a "What's the best old fashioned in town" tour.
Yep.
I still wanna take you I still want you I won't be able to take you, but I want you to try Goldwing. I probably think Virago has the best old fashioned, but pop in there before you leave. I'll be gone on
Yeah,
Thursday.
yeah.
Any experiences, people, conversations, or things like that that have been stand out in your mind?
I think they all have been for different reasons, but one I have to mention is my first day here, and me and Aisha went to the ABC store, which was a
Mhm.
whole different experience for me because I've never seen a store that just sells alcohol like that.
Oh,
We have them in London, but like
they
it's
sell other
completely
things.
different. Completely different. So going to the AB store, C store, and then after that we went to Burton's to have a drink and
Mhm.
some food. We arrived there at 1:30. So it's the first day that I met you. And
Mhm.
we didn't leave till 9:30. But in the room, I saw so much culture, so many. It was America in a movie, in a TV show. From meeting these three ladies that were going out all dressed up, all glammed up, and the way they were. The new generation. To meet. It was different, like the way they were, and going back to my love for Black American women, they they started the ball rolling because it was everything that I saw on TV. Where it was on TV or in a hip hop video, it was right in front of me. So so that, and then meeting all of Aisha's people like yourself, Sean, and another guy, and it was crazy that day.
That's great.
It was so funny hearing Sean's stories, and yeah, so that day was unique. And I thought to myself, if this is what I got to come while I'm here in America the next few weeks, this is unreal. Like, you don't get that. And it was nice to be in that environment because back in the UK, Black people don't really go out to have a drink in numbers, you know?
Mm.
But in the bar, it was the majority Black people. Then you had a lot of white people of all different generation, which I liked. So I just liked the whole atmosphere in terms of how everyone was mixing, but everyone was just getting about their business. So it was nice to see that because that doesn't happen in London. I mean, in the UK, because what we have is pubs, for example, where
Mhm.
it's a drinking place, but the majority of people that go to a pub are white people. You get a few Black people dotted around and stuff like that, but you don't get a space where it's predominantly Black. It's a bar selling drinks, and they're drinking from during the day because we arrived there around 1 and it was already packed.
Wow.
And then we've seen so many different people come throughout the day. But yeah, so that was definitely a highlight. Definitely.
That was funny. My favorite thing about Lawrence is he'll be like, "This is just like it is in the movies."
Yeah.
So the men were dapping up and was like calling each other baby, and he was like,
Yeah.
"This is just like Menace to Society." I think that
Yeah. You got me.
sometimes Black Americans don't know how much we are watched, right? From a cultural standpoint of you
Yeah.
and I are commiserating or reflecting on 90s Black music and movie
Yeah.
culture like all the time. Like you know the movies and you know the hits. So that's really interesting. It's been my experience that so many of the countries that aren't English speaking in West Africa, the people that I've met know English because they listen to the music and they've watched movies,
Yep.
which I think
Yep.
is absolutely remarkable because I have seen tons of Spanish language subtitle movies and I can't, I'm still rudimentary level. So that is always like really interesting reflections because I think that Black people in America, we feel like at the bottom and downtrodden, but I think that when you come outside of that, you not that we don't realize it, it becomes even more apparent how much we have shaped world culture and how much, sometimes our culture is like looked upon and like idolized, right? Or at least held up in some kind of way. So that is always, like, really interesting. Every when I was in Senegal, where he's like, "You like Erykah Badu? You listen to this song?" Like, and I'm like, "Oh, y'all can get down out y'all can get down out here."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's really, cool to see. So you have, like, another week or so
Yeah.
left here. Any kinda learnings, lessons, reflections from your time so far that you wanna take forward in, whether or not your restaurant experience, even hopefully you can come back here in Richmond and open something up. But I'm interested in your like any learnings or wisdoms or
Yeah.
takeaways from your time so far.
I think just like in Senegal, I think the experience I'm going to take away first and foremost is knowing that it's the people that make the country.
Mm,
So I'm looking at the people, and I've had such a valuable experience with the people here, more so than Senegal. But
mm,
definitely from here, it's the people first who I've met, and then building on that, the places that I've been to have a drink or go to eat and seeing how everything is run here. So I've taken a lot of knowledge
mm,
from a business point of view, what to expect if one day I come here to open up a restaurant here. But it starts with the people because now I'm kind of understanding the personalities. And when I write a menu, I kind of put myself in the space of the people
mm,
to execute a menu to make sure that they will like it and what everybody else likes. So that's how I write a menu. So
mm.
yeah, I've taken a lot of valuable experience from every single individual that I've met here.
Wonderful. So you had in London, your restaurant was called Papa L's.
Yeah.
All right. So and you had that for 4 years. How many years was it?
Yeah. 4 years, 4 years.
So you're figuring out what's next steps. What are your hopes for your food career going forward?
Well, I've always believed in myself in terms of the food that I do. It's something very unique. And the restaurant space that I provided was unique as an experience. And I know from a wider scale, this is something that is going to be very big with exposure, you know?
Mm,
And it's not only going to be very big as in like the food, it's just that the whole experience, which I'm trying to
mm,
create. The food, the service, the drinks, and then just, creating an environment where it's for the culture, which is completely different. The ambiance, and then everyone just treating it as their home,
mm,
when they go out to eat in terms of, what we're like, who we are having dinner with, whether it's a partner, friend, we're just in conversation, just having a good time, and then every now and then you hear your favorite song come on and you want to sing to it and stuff
yes,
like that.
yes. Because you're also used to be a DJ, so there's the music.
Yeah, so music plays a big part. So it's nice to have that. And I think something like this with my personality will work in the States. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but when I had the restaurant back in London, my favorite customers were Black American women because the level of support that they gave me and they just got it, what I was trying to do straight away. And they were just so happy that there was a space like this and how it happened. And they were like keen to listen to my story. So coming to America, I know I can recreate that but on a bigger scale and a better scale because the appreciation level will definitely go much higher than what it did back in London.
All right. So we are excited for you to potentially coming to America, hopefully to Richmond. I know while you were here, you met a bunch of the food people and culture in Richmond. Do you have a favorite meal that you have and a favorite place to drink?
So far, drinking wise, Rago, if I'm saying it right.
Yep, you got it from
Yes.
Roscoe. It's a rum,
Yeah.
local rum place. Yeah, their drinks are next level.
Yeah. And the barman was special.
Yeah.
He's very talented in his craft and consistent. So I aim for consistency. In terms of food, so far, I would have to say love what Chef Leah, I can't
Hmm.
remember her surname,
At the
from the
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt. Yeah, from the Roosevelt. I just love what she's doing.
Mm.
And seeing something like that and what she's done, as far as the whole package, and credit to her. And that's what I love, I would say there.
Mm.
definitely in terms of the best place I've gone to eat because yeah, she every single like in terms of like moving our culture and foods forward, she ticks the boxes. And that's what I want to see more of people like her doing this, but we're everywhere. And
Yeah.
she's definitely flying the flag, definitely.
Well, and that's why she's nominated for a James Beard. I think that we had a great night. I think we had like we ordered like everything on the
Yeah,
menu
yeah,
at the
yeah, yeah.
Roosevelt. And I think what you're getting at is it's like Southern inspired cuisine, but she took it to the next
Mm,
level. So we had things like crackling, which I have since I was a kid, which is like the skin of pigs, right? Which is from our
yeah,
perspective like a food that was eat during enslavement because they gave black people the scraps, right? So you're getting pig
scraps. Mm,
skin and but it was elevated. I think they served it with some like liver pate or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Of
they
course,
did.
we had some fried chicken or some wings and some collard greens, but they were definitely kind of elevated in their preparation, in their presentation. So, yeah, I think that that's a really interesting model to be inspired by your heritage cuisine in your case Gambian in her case Southern Black cuisine
Yeah.
and then creating a real elevated experience out of it. So hopefully we will see more of Chef Lawrence Gomez. Where can we find you on the interwebs? I know you're too busy cooking to be on social media, but if somebody wanted to find you, where would they find you, Chef Lawrence?
The best place to reach out to me is on my Instagram, which is Papel's Kitchen. Through there, I'm just like a move. I've been in how many continents in the last 5 months? Because I was in Saudi Arabia for 3 months from October to December. Went back to London. Was in Senegal from January to February or end of January, and then I've been in the States since end of January and now going on to February. So cooking in 3 different continents over the last 5 months. So I'm everywhere, but my Instagram's the best place.
You're like, I don't know where you're gonna be next, right? So
I don't know where I'm going to be next, man, but I'm hoping to come back here in April.
okay.
And I would love to do like on a wider scale, like a pop up, hire out a restaurant for like 2, 3 days, make it public. So, you know, get the city hopefully buzzing about who I am and what I do. So that's what I'm looking to do on my next visit. So I'm looking to do that in April. And I would love personally to open up a restaurant within 6 months, which I know I can do.
Okay. Come on, confidence. And so for listeners, you can find some of the pictures and the video from the Love Letter to Africa on Original Drip. So if you go to
Yeah.
Instagram and go to Original Drip, is partnering with Laurence on these American and Senegalese food ventures. So if you go there, you can see the whole meal. And actually, if you go on my Instagram, I have a bunch of pictures as well. And that's Ebony Walden. What is my Instagram? Ebony Walden 80 or the Original Drip, which is a coffee shop, or Papa L's Kitchen restaurant.
Yep.
All right. And I will put those in the show notes. Thank you, Chef Lawrence. And that is our show.
Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.